All right, welcome
Okay.
everybody. We're starting a few minutes late, but hopefully that will be okay. So I'll call to order this meeting, the Community Preservation Committee.
Who's taking minutes?
Oh, yeah. So Donna was supposed to be taking the minutes. So next alphabetically would be Garth, because we were going like first name, right?
Mhm.
I think you just did it.
You just,
But
yeah.
you're muted.
you're muted, so we can't know that you did it recently. But he just,
I did last month.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Who's after her?
something's quirky with
Something's
whatever order
weird,
we're
yeah.
going in.
Who hasn't done it recently?
Probably me.
Okay, do you want to volunteer? This should be an easy one.
Of course not. But I do like the system more than whatever. So yes, I will do it. Yes.
Okay, yeah, people haven't been here and it's been like throwing a wrench in it.
Yeah.
It's all right. I got it.
All right, okay, Donna will do it next time.
Okay.
Okay, so calling to order the meeting at 5:37 PM. We'll do a roll call on who is here right now. Susan,
Yes.
Wisty.
Yes.
Donna is not here. Garth is here.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Amy is not here, and Travis, I am here. So we do have five, which is a quorum. So we can move ahead. So we have public comment on our agenda. Is there anyone who wants to make a public comment? I don't think we have any members of the public here.
Yeah.
All right, not seeing any. We will move on to approval of minutes from March 28th, 2024.
I move that the minutes be accepted as written.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Oh, God.
Garth seconds. All right, so we have a motion that was seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, since we do have one person remote, we are supposed to do roll call votes, so I'll just do a quick roll call vote on approval of those minutes. Susan?
Yes.
Garth?
Yes.
Wisty?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that motion passes and the minutes are approved. All right, so new business. Give me a second here and I'm gonna share my screen. So our new business is the share to meeting. All right, Garth, are you seeing this now?
Yes.
Okay,
I see
so.
the agenda.
Yeah, okay, so new business, review and approve fiscal year 2025 Community Preservation Committee budget. And Christian went ahead and put together, if we go with the 5% administrative expenses, 10% open space, 10% historic, 10% housing. He put together that, also the spreadsheet that has the surcharge amount in and an estimated state match of 10%, which is on the low end of what it probably will be, but just to play it safe. And then we also have a letter. So one thing I wanted to just throw a wacky idea out there is that since since we talk about how housing is so important and we have so many public comments about housing being important, we could allocate more of a percentage to housing, maybe 30% to housing. And then even if there were no housing projects next year, there'd be absolutely no pressure to use that money for anything else. And it would roll over and, help build up housing. I do have a spreadsheet where I could recalculate all this. Just wanted to throw that out there and see what people thought about it. And
So that would bring, let's say, the community housing to close to, not quite 100,000, but close to it. So it'd be 26, so it'd be 780, roughly 80,000.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
it, were-
yeah.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
just throwing out a number.
30, yeah, we're throwing out a
Um,
number. Okay,
You know,
yeah.
and the 10% for everything definitely makes it more flexible.
Mhm.
For us, depending on, what projects we have and everything, but just thought I would throw that out there as an idea. And I don't know if there's any discussion on that thought.
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
Is, um, I'm thinking it's a really good thought.
Hmm.
If it is, so if at some point we wanted to change that, we could, right? When we.
This would only be for 1 year.
Yeah,
So, once we would vote on that and it would be approved by city council, it'd be locked in for that 1 year, but
Yeah.
then next year.
Okay.
we can do 10% again, if we want, or raise it to 70% next year,
Right.
Yeah.
whatever we want, it changes year by year.
Mhm.
And I really like the idea of using this reserve, this discussion of the reserves as a way to talk about our priorities. So I like that idea a lot.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute. Just so I can go through my emails, find this spreadsheet. Just so I'm not showing my whole email history here in the meeting. I was gonna get this together before, but I, at the last minute, decided to attend the SGIC meeting that was in here before, so. Didn't-
I have just a question on the admin portion. I
Yeah.
think the amount is fine. Do we have like what we've actually spent on admin? Like, have we spent 30,000 each year on admin? Like,
I
does that
think-
go to Christian's time? Does like that goes
No.
to like some amount of signs, but I can't imagine we've spent like 30 grand worth of
Yeah,
admin
so,
over the last 2 years.
yeah, so the admin, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can say that none of that money has been spent on Christian's time. And it's only been spent on those things like printing flyers, printing the signs. I'd say we've probably spent less than $1,000.
Mm.
And then the admin funds, if those don't get used, they get rolled into the flexible fund for the next year. So, yeah, so I mean,
Okay, so we're not building up a big bunch of admin.
no,
Fund.
each year the admin fund is brand new.
Okay.
And whatever's left over rolls into that flexible fund
For the next year.
for the next year, yeah. Okay, so this, just to show, I should look at my own screen instead of looking up there. If this was 30.
It's 78, okay.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that was just a number I was throwing out.
Mhm.
If it was 30, there'd be 78,000. 26 for open space, / recreation and historic. And then there'd still be 117,000 in the like flexible fund.
Right.
Flexible.
So I was actually gonna bring this up last year, but
Mm.
I was on vacation and I missed this meeting, so it didn't happen.
No, I like that idea.
David?
I don't think it's really necessary, and also everything is set up to go with the 10% to approve it at this meeting and send it
Mhm.
forward. So I don't know if that's a consideration.
Yeah, I will say I did talk to Christian about this and he said, he gave me this spreadsheet and he was like, if you guys do change it, just change it in the spreadsheet and then, I think it's easy to just change those
documents. Okay, that's not a concern.
yeah.
I just
But yeah,
I wonder if this is a distinction that really makes a difference, would it just be
Mhm.
that some fraction of $78,000 could potentially roll forward?
yeah, and I mean, it's possible that there could be no housing projects next
Mm.
year and all 78,000 would roll forward to the next year.
Guess I wouldn't like to constrain it that way in case something that, somebody came with something that was a good project.
Mhm.
Surely the poor recreation department is gonna have to come and bring forth a lot of stuff again.
Mhm.
And if there's not a compelling housing thing, I would rather see the money be used. That's my opinion.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Um, I think there's a lot of validity in that. I'm gonna put a however though. One of the things, David, that you had brought up and that we tried then to implement, I think, was that idea about not just funding a part of a thing and a part of a thing, but to
Yeah.
get something done.
That's true.
And that seemed like it was a really good idea. And if we had more money set aside for housing, I think we would know realistically how many full projects we could do. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
And the housing crunch is gonna be on for a while. I think it's realistic to say that it will be here
Yeah.
for some of our lifetimes. So,
Yeah. That makes
and,
sense.
and I
too.
really do, because I want to address too that idea that you had brought up, because I think it's a good one. So, anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, my thought is I like this idea.
You can play with that.
Yeah,
There's 20%.
there's 20%. I, I mean, we could probably put all of this money into housing and not make a dent into what we need to do. But, the one thing that I keep on thinking about is that, I've heard of other places that have much larger CPA endowments and, they are buying, they're putting $4 million into something and we are, things like that. And we can't do that. And if we have that money set aside, if we don't spend it, and then we have the following year, we start to build up the kind of nest egg that will allow us to do something big if we need to. So that's the one thing that occurs to me if we, and maybe it's not 30%, maybe it's 20%. My guess is we're going to spend it, but if not, then I would like to see us start to build up a housing fund that actually could buy some property or, or make a serious commitment to a larger, to the Wilson's building or to something else where right now, I mean, when we look at, the CSO's development is going to cost 23 million. The Wilson's building is probably going to cost somewhere in the same category. And while they need our community commitment in order to get some of that, it would be nicer if we could do a larger community commitment. So that's my thought on it.
Is increasing those percentages the mechanism by which we can create one of these carry forward things, or could we, for example, carry it forward in the reserve?
So I think we
We can carry it for, we don't have to spend all the money each year,
Right.
right? So we're, what was, I brought that up at the last one, like,
Yeah.
we don't have to shove all the money out. We could have been, we could have said like, we're not excited about these other 3 or 4 projects. Let's just roll over the last 50 grand and, use it for something next year. Making,
Mhm.
putting it aside in a reserve, like does sort of pre-allocate it for that, but we can definitely do that, right? If it's the will of the committee, each year.
It is a little bit harder to do that when you go through all the public input processes.
Yeah.
I just think, when you have the public weighing in on a choice and, kind of indicating that people are positive about so maybe this is a better way to do that.
Mhm.
It kind of goes around. It kind of makes it a little bit more socially feasible
Yeah,
Yeah.
to do a carry forward.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think my thought was, that, gosh, what was my thought? Yeah, basically that, like, if you put it, oh, I know what I was gonna say. I think looking at, the amount we allocated to each category in the past few years, now like we say housing is most important and the public says housing is most important. And then housing has been like one of the lowest categories that we've funded,
Mhm.
partially because of the projects that have come in, but this past year, we could have put a lot more towards
Right.
housing because there were projects that we didn't fully fund for housing. But this would be a way to sort of, walk the walk. It's
Mhm.
like we're talking the talk and the plan, but we haven't actually shown that
Right.
commitment to housing.
Right.
This would be like a step in that direction.
Right. And assuming that Tim's greatest project moves forward, I would assume that they will be coming in for considerably more money for next year. As one example, I think there are some other things that are also going to be on the table. But, and Amy was actually trying to tell me what some of them were. So I think there's going to be some other stuff, but yeah, I'm okay, if the 20%, I don't, maybe we want to start low and then move it up because, if it works with the 20%, maybe next year we say, well, 20% worked really well, but we need extra. That would be okay with me. But something that emphasizes that this is a priority, I think is fine and does give us that possibility of rolling over depending on what we need.
I've actually come around to the 30.
The 30.
30%, all right, then I'm fine with, I love the idea of 30%.
The one thing that the one thing I wish is that if we had more of an ability to encourage like the creation of market rate housing along with the sort of housing that the CPA directs toward, I just wish there was a mix so we could encourage the mix of housing that the city needs.
Yeah. I think Amy is working on that. Unfortunately, this funding,
Just
it
doesn't apply.
doesn't apply and neither does CDBG apply.
Yeah, but I will say that this money can apply to projects where part of the housing would be at, the levels.
Yeah.
Right.
Part would be market rate.
Right.
Right, that's
So
true.
it kind of, it
Mhm.
can fund part of those projects.
Mhm.
Like the Wilsons. thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So let me just look at that. So I asked Christian, before this meeting, how we had motioned on doing this and that if it was one of those things that has to be like really specific,
Mhm.
And he said last year it was just, motion to approve as written or whatever,
Mhm.
but, since we did a mod of,
Mhm.
if we are gonna go with, the
Okay.
30%, I think it'd be good to maybe just say what the percentages
Okay.
are.
I'm going to move that we change the community housing reserve from 10% to 30%. And in so doing, the budgeted reserves beyond that would go to 45%.
Is there a second on that motion?
Wait, what?
That was a motion to increase
The-
community housing to 30% from 10,
From
Mhm.
which
10%.
therefore reduces the flexible fund, AKA
Right.
budgeted reserves. to
Okay.
45. Is there a second on that?
Yeah, second.
Okay, let me have a second. And I guess just a friendly amendment on that motion would be that we're voting to approve the whole, not just the community housing budget
Right.
reserves, but the remaining items as,
I accept the friendly amendment.
okay. Any other discussion on that? Right, and you vote on Susan?
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Garth?
Yes,
And I am also a yes, so this will be our budget sent to city council for next year or next fiscal year. All right,
Okay, tell me if this should be brought up later. This just gives me a thought
mhm,
that, I think that for 2 years, the community's been happy with what we've done. And even just, the other day, having to do with Poet Tower,
mm,
about saying, well, 50,000, we ought to ask Preservation Commission for that money. Okay, so people are thinking about ways to use it. Okay, so what I'm building up to say is, it makes me wonder if we could make some kind of a numerous presentation community-wide.
mhm,
It would mean developing charts and stuff, but ultimately to ask the community if they would be willing to vote on increasing
mm,
our percentage from 1 to 2 or 3, and then showing what that would make possible. I mean,
Yeah.
because it only seems like people are bringing in more and more stuff to us.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, I guess for me personally, I'm not sure like how long should we be doing this and like rack up, projects that people approve of before bringing that up? I think there was a presentation where it was like, if you're opening up the idea of increasing it, you're also creating the idea of let's get rid of it too. So,
I would like to see us have more successes that people can actually see and are really, something that they recognize. And part of that is getting our little signs up and all that kind of thing and making, because I know there are people who are aware of it and there are a lot of people who aren't.
Mhm.
And so,
I agree.
but the idea is one with merit, but I think we need to, I don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
Personally.
I'll just dream about it.
okay.
Yes,
and
okay, bring it up
there's
again.
people that are aware of it and they're like, it's just a tax increase,
Yeah,
right? It's a narrow tax increase that can only be used for these 4 categories,
Mhm.
right? I end up hearing that
Yeah.
to some amount. So I think having more wins would be good, right? Currently there's like 2 things complete of the 10
Yeah, there's not
projects
many.
yeah,
or 15 projects.
yeah. The bocce court is just beginning. So, yeah, I would agree that we need to see more.
Okay,
I guess it is exactly that though, Garth, I mean, it is like, a voluntary tax increase.
Mhm.
With the restrictions on how it's spent. However, I think, it would be interesting over time to cast it more of like, it protects your tax dollars from being used in other ways that might not be in alignment necessarily with your values. So
Mhm.
it kind of has that the restriction kind of has a positive aspect.
Yeah, and I will say, going back to our budget, that when I was going through and categorizing people's public comments for this past year and the last year, a lot of people said the reason I voted for this was for the housing. And they're like, you should give all money to housing because this is why I voted for it, So I didn't see many people who said that about any of the other categories. That was like the one that people are most, I think people like the other things too, but that was
yeah, I wonder how many people realize, like, I didn't realize until sitting on this committee, how little money recreation gets.
mm,
The importance of this committee for recreation. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'd had those discussions with Christie as we were dealing with the development of the skate park. But yeah, it's an issue. I think, we just gotta it's a larger city budget issue, I think, in general.
Okay, okay, thank you.
And I will say, in addition to recreation, also the Conservation Commission, for anything.
Right.
Hopefully we'll have some open space projects.
Mm.
Okay, so our other new business item tonight, is just beginning the discussion on evaluating the CPC process after our second year. I don't think this has to be something we have to finish tonight, but, maybe, I don't know if anyone has like any initial thoughts or has any ideas for how we could sort of evaluate what we've done so far. And I know David was new this year, so you might have like a fresh take on things too. Not to put you on the spot, but I think we could all discuss this and, we can talk about this at our next few meetings as well.
I mean, I can just, I thought it worked remarkably well. I thought it was a great process, and I thought everybody approached it in a really thoughtful way. I mean, I guess the issue of the public input is probably the same issues for public input for anything that the city tries to do, or any kind of public input process. I don't know that I have anything particularly smart about that, other than, keep trying different things, I suppose. I don't know if, I don't know. I'm in kind of a two minds of the thing about using social media to promote it. The city does have social media accounts. So I don't know if there's something that lots of people use social media, so I don't know if there's something that we could maybe redouble our efforts on that. And that's just me spitballing.
Yeah. And I do know that the city had shared our public hearing and the survey and things like that. So I know the city did share those.
Yeah.
I tried to share them too, personally, the city's post and, so, yeah.
I wonder if we made outreach efforts to any kind of organization, whether it be the Elks or the Y or Green and Greenfield or any kind of organization to ask them to bring it up, if that
That's
might
very
help.
smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't take us that much, particularly if like during the next couple of months, we would look up addresses or a contact name. Because then we could just send out the same kind of generic letter to everybody, even in an email or to churches, to Girl Scout, really, to any kind of organization.
Yeah, my thoughts were along a similar line, to try to not create a new wheel, but rather try to look at the wheels that we have and figure out how to connect in. And perhaps one of our charges to ourselves could be to each make a list of organizations that we think would be helpful to at least get the word out, and then start compiling that list for Christian to use when he does his thing, or when Matt, puts things out on. So I think that might be helpful, and we can see what that does. But I've been very pleased, I gotta say, with the number of people who have come to meetings and wish to discuss things, and the fact that we had 2 meetings where there was a totally different group of people who came to talk about things that they believed were important. That was impressive to me, because and they're not people who go to meetings. I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out is, we have lots of folks in town who go to meetings and we see them regularly, but there are folks who don't do that, and how to reach them. Maybe the whole thing that we're talking about, the idea that Wisty has, might help us move in that direction.
Yeah. Remember, there were only like 2 or 3 people who attended when we went to Elms Terrace.
Right.
But one of those people, so a third of the people who attended, I have seen numerous times on the project that I'm working on at the swimming area.
Oh, really?
And she, every time she reflects on, you know, remember we met at that meeting?
Hmm.
And her interest was in doing more with the environment. And she keeps bringing that up and over.
Oh.
I mean, that really stuck in her mind that we were there.
Hmm.
And she always approaches me and makes that reference. So that's a third of the.
Winner, winner.
I would like us to do that, though, make an effort.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess, we can find more, not this, I don't think we did it this past year, but the year before that.
Yeah.
With like the swimming area.
Mhm. Yeah,
Our very first.
yeah, very first, yeah, yeah. And unfortunately,
We
it
had-
was,
we had one- we had
we had a
one person
drought, so
show
it was a
up.
problem.
And then we also, because I did this with Giannis, we set up a table at the farmer's market
Yeah,
and that was our very first.
yeah.
Before we even, did the process at all. And a lot of people came up to that table to talk. A lot of people
Mhm.
came up.
Mhm.
And I think we only did that one time.
Mhm.
So,
I was just thinking about that, maybe piggybacking on other organizations' events.
Exactly,
I was
exactly.
thinking, well, what if there was some sort of a thing going on at the library or at this place or at that place and just go
Yeah.
where people are already gonna be,
Right.
like at the
right,
farmer's market.
Right.
mhm.
And we have, if any of those things required us to pay like a registration fee, like we could use our admin funds.
Mhm. Mhm.
Cause that's like in the use of, us doing what we need to do. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think coming up with more ideas like that, farmer's market,
Mhm.
other things like that.
Really, there wouldn't be a reason why we couldn't even contact businesses and ask them if they would just let it be known among their employees that, there's that thing. Just
Yeah.
the wider kind of group of people.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, you could certainly send it to like the chamber and the
Mhm.
GBA. They may already be on the list. I mean, I think if, it's sort of an interesting thing, like, do we want to like solicit more, private businesses that are like, oh, yeah, my building's historic, give me some money.
Mhm.
Or do we want like, there's been a lot of talk about like getting more like actual like small community projects. And I think the only one we've done so far has been that the bike racks is because John and Nick worked with the rec department to find it. And
Mhm.
that was right in all the feedback. People were like very excited about that one because it I think it's a small, doable, specific
Mhm.
thing. And so if we can have, I think it'd be awesome if we had like 20 small, doable, specific little
Mhm.
projects that we could do. The town ones and the housing ones end up being like, significantly more expensive. But these little things that are either like finishing stuff or doing little improvements, I think could be really cool. Like they get done within within months of getting the funding, kind of thing. And I think they're in general more more accessible in terms of people could sort of see how that would actually happen.
Yeah.
Versus being like, oh, well, we're gonna like throw $100,000 at this multi-gazillion dollar thing that's gonna be financed by a bunch of state agencies, and but they really need our money, kind of thing. It's a harder sell.
The counter to that is that almost anything involving historical preservation is going to involve a private entity. I mean, there was one thing brought forward by the city. So, it for historical preservation, that doesn't fit that kind of model of community projects. And also for these larger projects, I mean, we've heard over and over again that having the local buy-in, the local investment is what the larger entities look for their funding.
Yeah, it won't happen without it.
Yeah.
It honestly will not happen.
Yeah,
without it.
no, I realize they're definitely, but in terms of like what people see, right, in terms of,
Mhm.
people looking
Yeah.
at the projects, looking at that survey feedback, they seem most excited about things that were, conceivable and doable and, and for and on public property.
Okay, so even just this makes me think, because I was really thinking about getting responses on feedback and stuff like that. But also, I know, this guy who I've used for physical therapy, he's a young guy, grew up around here, loves Greenfield. He, when he found out I was on the commission, he started asking me about the pond. And he said, I got a bunch of buddies and we were all hockey players. And I would just love to find out if that pond could be used by people again or for something, anything. But I was saying, well, like put together some kind of idea or talk to Travis to see how do you apply? Because a lot of people don't have a clue of how to apply. And they don't even know how to do step one. They don't, and so partly I think that some level of that education would be really nice to just, and I know we put it out on a calendar to say first, fill out an application. But like, I'm not good at reading that kind of stuff. If I hear somebody talking to me, I'll be much better about the whole thing. So my point is, I think if there's some way that we could almost have a couple of educational sessions.
Again, I think the issue is going to where the people are as opposed to trying to get them to come to us. The people who go to meetings will come to us. So perhaps we pick out 2 or 3 different sectors that we haven't talked to before. I think your idea of the Elks is a good one, for instance, and some other community body. And if we had a couple of them that we went to, and every year we just do 2, because it's hard for us to pull it all together. But do that kind of, we'd like 30 minutes of the time of your next meeting and sit down and walk through it. And with a, did you know that we have funded this, and this, and also and this is how you can do it too, kind of thing, that we may be able to broaden awareness, because it's really a broadening awareness piece that we need to do. So but I would like that. I'd like that idea of going to where the people are, and then also doing some listing where we send out a lot of announcements to folks just generally so that our list of contacts is greater.
So I guess another part of evaluating our process, in addition to all that, is, like all the forms that we're using. I don't think we're ready tonight to like go through line by line and because we did that last year. But I guess maybe that could be like a homework assignment for all of us, is to like look at our application, look at our pre-application, look at our application, look at our scoring sheets. And then maybe next time we can go through and, maybe there's nothing we want to change. Maybe we fixed it last year and we're happy with it. But
David, what did you think about
I thought they were very straightforward. And I really thought I thought it was great to have the scoring sheets and our provisional allocation thing before the decision meeting. I thought was very easy for me to do and, you know, with Christian, so, you know, a lot of that has to do with his support, but, yeah, I mean, but I I want to look at the pre-application form in particular. Because we seem to, that was the one thing that it seemed like maybe maybe there might be some improvements, right? Because we have people forgetting to check off a box or checking the wrong things, or maybe there's some way we can help people to streamline that in some way.
And I will say one thing that, after our first year, one of the recommendations from Stewart at the Community Preservation Coalition, one idea was like where they're checking off like housing or historic or whatever, actually having like the grid, you know, of like the yeses and nos, what's allowed. And then just having empty boxes and say, check one box. Like,
Right.
what is your, you know,
Mhm.
that way people aren't just like checking everything. Oh, yeah.
Right,
open space,
right,
certain
right,
space.
right.
So that's one thing we can think about. I think we mentioned that last time, but then we ended up not changing it because we were like, well, sometimes it's, you know, this and that.
Yeah,
But
right.
it could be like, what is your main?
Yeah,
what's the
right,
main-
right. You can only check one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So that,
The one weird thing I noticed when I was filling out the scoring is there's like, it felt like you got more points if the CPA was the only method of funding.
yeah, I
Which-
remember something about that too, where
Which felt a little odd,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you know, right, you have a $50,000 project and it's like, oh, well, it's only going to happen if you give me the money, versus like, oh, hey, we really need your match, right? It like that scoring portion didn't seem to match our.
Okay, so we need to look at that again. I don't remember that, but I think it's
yeah,
possible.
I think
Yeah.
there was one question that was like, if you had a higher match, you got more points. But then there was another question, like you were saying, where it was kind of the opposite. And I remember seeing that too. Um,
Right, yeah, because there is the one on like, is it, you know, less than 25, less, you know, 50,
Mhm.
50
Yeah.
or more,
Right,
and
right.
then there was like a, you know, this'll, you know, probably happen anyway if it doesn't get funding,
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
or this'll, you know, will only happen if it gets CPA funding. Like that one ended up being I don't know, just being a little bit weird on the
Okay.
scoring portion. Like I think it would be useful, like data to know, but I'm not sure we should have that as,
Okay.
well, maybe
you know, or
we
at
can
least
all,
that again. Yeah.
we can all
necessarily.
look at that scoring sheet.
Okay.
Yeah. And another thought I had on like the application is maybe requiring people to include a map, or, you know, something like that that shows exactly where it is.
Mhm.
I don't know. That, I mean, sometimes it doesn't, you know, if it's like the documents, like that doesn't really apply, but if it's like, if you're on a property, we need to make sure we know like exactly what property you're talking about and
Mhm.
give us a
Right,
parcel
like-
number,
like
an
go-
address, like whatever.
Yeah, go to the town GIS thing and like
Yeah,
pull up the, you know, screenshot the plot and like
Yeah.
put an X where you're putting your thing.
yeah. That was just a thought I had.
Mhm.
Right, so it sounds like we have some homework, maybe, you know, looking at those forms for next time. And seeing if there's any way to, and also coming up with thoughts for the organizations to be in contact with or events to attend, things like that. Come up with a good list, get a plan. I think like now's the time to do that, cause
Yeah.
you know, it won't be that long and then pre-application.
That's right.
Right,
And we come
Right.
in, so.
right. Which brings us to our next.
Which brings us to our next thing, yeah, actually. So old business discussion on the timeline for CPC cycle going forward. I talked to Christian about this and he still hasn't heard anything about the capital funding process moving.
Mm,
So I think if we don't know if that's gonna happen, I think we should stay the way that we are now. Like, you know, it's worked for 2 years. It might not be ideal, but I think we shouldn't change if there's a possibility we're gonna be changing in the same way that the organization we're competing with
Yeah.
is changing. So I mean, my thought is to just stay the course for right now,
Mhm.
since we don't know, and
Yeah.
we're pretty much out of time to change it.
Right.
Unless we're skipping a whole year.
So this time, didn't we get some information before we had to make our final thing? Like we kind of knew, well, they're not going to fund this or they're,
We
Am I
knew,
remembering that
yeah,
right?
we knew that the capital improvement committee was going to be recommending not funding the projects that were before us, so.
Yeah.
It hadn't actually been like voted on or
Mhm.
anything at that point. Only in that committee had it been. And the previous year in that committee, they were recommending funding some things and not other things. And then I think they ended up not getting funded.
Right.
things That were recommended.
Mhm.
So just because it gets recommended at that committee doesn't mean
right.
it's gonna be funded or not.
But if it says
Mhm.
we're not recommending, then that's
Probably
probably.
Not, yeah,
Probably not.
yeah, that's not gonna,
Yeah,
unlikely to reverse. Yeah,
yeah.
But it could.
Yeah, it
Like,
could.
big
It-
Public outcry.
yeah, it could, but it's
Very
less likely.
Yeah.
So,
It
Does anyone have
at
any
least
thoughts on
gives ideas.
yeah, so I think you're right. I think until we have something firm, we should stay where we are. And then we can figure out something in the future once we have something better.
Yeah, and then if it ends up, my thought was like, if it ends up that committee doesn't change, you know, we already have this idea now of possibly moving
Mhm.
our, next cycles, and we could do that a little more proactively for the following
Mhm.
year, instead of like right now, like at the
Right.
last minute, trying to change things. So,
Yeah, so we don't need a motion on it if we're not changing it.
yeah.
Okay.
Anyone have any other thoughts on it?
I think I saw at a recent city council meeting, there was some discussion of changing the timelines and sequencing for
Mhm.
something or another with the budget process. It was it was exceedingly confusing and the council itself seemed confused. It's taking it back to a committee, so I think it's still in flux. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
we should just do our thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
right.
Okay.
So if there's no other discussion on that, hold on, I'm gonna go back into my email here. I think there was one update. Gonna get that. We'll be done early,
Woo-hoo.
hopefully.
Excellent.
Okay, so project updates. The second invoice to the Historical Society has been paid.
For last year's, not this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So that was for the documents.
Yeah, for
The Peter Miller.
Peter
collection.
Peter Miller's documents, yeah.
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 I was trying to, Christian attached multiple documents here. I was trying to look at what the dates on these were. Okay, give me 1 second and I'll.
Sure.
look at these. And it's not a whole lot to see, but. 4 PDFs here. Okay. Okay, so this, I think, is the newest invoice. 3/5/2024. So you can see the, what the service was,
Mhm.
the hours that were put in, hosting volunteer, data entry, data entry, data entry, data entry, data entry.
Mhm.
So that was $930. This, I think, was where does it say the, oh, that's January 31st.
Hmm.
That was the last one. So the sorting,
Mhm.
collection care, also data entry.
When, could you,
Oh, I think this was I think this was the invoice that included both of those.
uh-huh,
So this is the invoice that was paid, I think, for $2,400.
Okay.
Yeah.
for the next meeting, could we get a kind of a list from Christian of what's left in some of these? It's just so we have a vague idea of how close they are to finishing, which would be really nice.
Mhm. And then here was like an inventory of contents that they've been working on.
Oh,
So
Cool.
a lot of stuff.
yeah, okay. No, they've obviously been doing the work. That's,
Yeah.
you know,
So that was the only project update
Mhm.
Christian had received. The only other project update I know is I saw the city just posted about the bocce courts.
Right.
And they just posted on Facebook about that. It's happening.
It's like housing, it takes forever.
Yeah. I know the bocce courts, they said should be done by June, so.
Okay,
Yeah, quick.
cool.
Right?
for that.
Summertime bocce party. We'll have to have our July meeting.
Bocce on the
Some,
4th of July.
We'll have a little Amaro and play
Mhm.
some bocce out there.
There we go.
The only other thing that I have is, I had reached out to, city council about our recommendations for this year, that if, they wanted me to be there, to talk about any of them or answer any questions. I haven't heard anything back yet, and I don't think it's gone through Ways and Means yet, because I think the mayor just sent it not that long ago.
Mm.
So, I might reach out again, just as like a
Mhm.
reminder, and maybe reach out to, I'm not sure who is like chair of Ways and Means.
I would like that.
Okay. But I could try to contact that person too,
Do that.
because I think, there might be more discussion at Ways and Means, but I think last year it was pretty quick. Yes, recommendations, and they got forwarded.
Mike, what's his name? City councilor, I think his name is Mike,
Is it Mike Toronzo who said?
believe so.
I mean, I'm in now. I'm in. All right.
Main thread. So anyway, I'll try to reach out again, and you all already gave your verbal approval for me to speak on behalf of the community.
Yes, yes, yes.
It just hasn't happened yet, and I don't know if it will, but, because we did the same thing last year, said, that, if you want me to be there to talk about anything or answer any questions. They were like, probably not worth your time. We have a lot on the agenda, we don't need to come.
Yeah,
That sounded good.
yeah. I don't have,
Okay. Well, I can find it, but.
yeah.
So, all right, so that was the last thing on our agenda.
Okay.
Um,
And I move that we adjourn this meeting.
is there a second?
Second.
All right, that is hand up. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn that's seconded. All those in favor of adjourning? All right, that's unanimous. So we are adjourned at 6:31 PM.